Okay, we'll call the meeting to order. It's
We want to wait a couple more minutes and see if Councillor Hughes is...
Oh, sorry, he is coming. He's just gonna be late.
Oh,
He's,
did he say how late?
He's in North Van about 10 minutes ago.
okay. We'll proceed. 15:04. I have a hard stop on the other end. This time it's a real hard stop. And I'll ask for a motion and a second to approve the agenda. Thank you. Any discussion? Any adds? This being the agenda of the Council Strategy Committee of the Council of the Village of Lions Bay, British Columbia, Canada. And seeing none, I'll call for public participation. There being none, we'll go to approval of the minutes of the previous meeting of said committee. Thank you very kindly. Can I have a motion and a second? Thanks. Any issues with the minutes as provided?
No changes for me.
Under 6A, we discussed a lot more than that. I don't know how important it was to have it in the minutes because obviously it came out in the result. So, I mean, for example,
It took 2 hours.
yeah, I wanted to see something on carriage houses, but you know that's going to come out in the wash, so it's fine as it is, right?
Well, these were the topic headings that were covered off in the report.
That's where it came from. Okay,
Yeah.
fair enough. Okay, so second motion is on the table. All in favour? Opposed? That carries. And business arising, there being none, we'll move on to unfinished business. And there is a staff recommendation that the information report Lions Bay zoning bylaw review report number 3 draft bylaw for discussion be received, and that a public information meeting to discuss the draft zoning bylaw be scheduled for 7 p.m. Thursday, January 19th this year at the Broughton Community Hall, Lions Bay. Can I have a motion and a second and discussion? Steve, I think this is where you start talking, is that right?
Okay. So this is the first draft of the new zoning bylaw that you have before you, based on the 2 reports that I did and with some updating and obviously your first look at it. We focused on the key issues of regulation of short-term rentals, the marijuana retail prohibition as well as production, looking at the density bonusing policy and some basic regulations to get a start on that topic. The commercial industrial equipment storage, which we talked quite a bit about, and then Peter and I followed up with some discussion on that before we committed it into the regulation. Went back and forth a little bit there. The secondary suite provisions and the foreshore zoning, those are kind of some of the highlights, I think, of the project. I think the real big message with this, though, is it's really an amalgamation of the 2 zoning bylaws that are in existence in the village and stitching those together. So we haven't actually produced the map yet, but essentially the zoning on the land is going to be pretty much staying the same. From what I certainly strive to achieve that. So with respect to the residential zones, in amalgamating the zoning for Lions Bay with the Brunswick Beach zoning, I essentially created a little sub-area within the overall zoning so that the setbacks and the existing siting provisions and things like that in Brunswick Beach were maintained. So you don't get a lot of non-conforming setbacks and things from property lines and so forth. The uses may change a little bit in the residential, but not significantly, I would say. I think the big change there is that the secondary suites, which were not provided for under the old GBRD bylaw, are now provided for in the residential zone in Brunswick Beach. So that would be the significant change as far as the bylaw is concerned. And of course, the vast majority of property in Lions Bay is zoned residential. Under the old Metro Vancouver bylaw, there were some properties above the highway that they had a couple of different rural zones. And we've we've basically done away with those. Some of the zones were actually within highway right-of-way, and we've either designated existing properties as residential, provided, looking forward to getting the map, or to a zone that we're calling natural area conservation, which is, and it's essentially crown lands, but they're the uplands above the developed area of the village.
Yeah.
Then the pit area was resource use? for that?
Resource use, and that would include the, your fire training area and so forth.
Well, so perhaps we can just interject so that we don't get too far down the rabbit hole without input from council. So I'll kick it off by saying, so specifically on that resource use zone, how does that jive with use of a facility in that zone as fire training? How is that resource use? Resource use means to me something like gravel and coal and diamond extraction.
If I'm not mistaken, it is recognized as
Yeah.
gravel mine.
Well,
And also the fire
it?
training facility is listed as a specifically permitted use.
yes, I know, but it was almost like saying, and you can also paint landscape pictures there. You know, it was a pretty sort of, didn't really jive with the description of the zone. You can extract resources there and also do fire training.
Well, that's simply a recognition of the existing use on the property, so rather than,
Yeah, but that's presupposing that's what the zone is. Why not call that zone municipal or civic?
Well, civic is a use which is defined, a civic use.
In our little definitions thing.
Okay.
Yep, civic use, page 8, middle.
Yeah, no, I know the civic use, but why include the fire training facility in
Well, you gotta call it something. It's a gravel pit. It's a former waste dump. It's been used as a fire training facility for a number of years, 15 or more years. There's an adjacent parcel of land that we're looking at for public works yard usage.
So
These
what
are
would
all
that
sort
be
of-
then?
These are all resource type uses. These are commonly,
resource? Resource to me means mining and trees, lumber.
yeah,
So what is this going to be zoned as?
civic.
Civic zone
oh,
or civic
this
use?
This is RS1. Talk about this? Residential?
No, this building that we're in.
Oh, okay, this would be,
Civic. Community use or,
Yeah, community
Yeah.
use.
Yeah.
So why not community use up there? And it's not gravel pit. It's specifically not gravel pit. The gravel pit is
Well-
slightly to the north.
well, the whole thing is that whole area, Brunswick Pit, is not all community use. There's only currently, there's only the crown lease that we have for the fire department that's community use.
Yes. So why is
So-
that not done community use rather than resource extraction? In other words, we're not going to go too much into detail because this is going to all come out in the consultation phase. But it just struck me that it's a bit weird to have a fire training facility, which to me sounds like a civic use, and the future, and the fire training facility is here, obviously, as we know very well, and we're looking at this spot here, up to a divider, which Peter tells me is where the gravel actually gets extracted from on this side, for the new public works facility. This and this seems to me should be zoned civic use. In fact, yeah, these boundaries, this is the fire training facility here. It goes over 3 different land types. It's bright green, dark green, and purple. But okay, it just struck me. I sort of thought, okay, that's weird. Let me ask about that.
if the definition of the site for the fire training facility is well established through a lease or a license that has a proper legal map,
Well, there's issues with respect to the mapping of that particular leased area that we are in the process of applying with Flinro to amend the terms of our lease.
I know.
So I think for the time being, we don't want to simply designate that particular parcel as a particular different zone than the
Yeah.
rest of what's there.
That's
So
where I was just gonna go.
I think
Okay,
it's
is that- is
better
that-
to have a little bit of,
Flexibility.
The zone must follow
Flexibility.
ownership parcel boundaries?
Well, if you're going to potentially be changing the area of the lease for the fire training facility, the terms of Crown land leases and licenses are in conformance with local zoning.
Correct.
So you'd be putting yourself potentially in a position where you would need to rezone some of the land to civic use if you expanded it to the gravel area. So it's more a matter of convenience for you to have this use listed in this zone so that you don't have to go through a rezoning if you expand your use area for the fire training site.
Okay, so you're proposing that all be a RU1, and in RU1 is allowed resource use and fire department training facility. How does that allow us to put a public works facility there?
The public works yard is permitted under the infrastructure use, isn't it, Peter?
yeah, infrastructure. The
So-
definition of infrastructure
Where is
includes-
infrastructure in the RU1 definition?
Infrastructure uses are permitted in all zones.
Oh, I see, okay.
So we've allowed you.
Municipal infrastructure.
Well, municipal and licensed under
Okay.
other regulatory bodies.
To
like
show-
CRTC
Hydro,
or-
TELUS.
Yeah. So that sort of is a catch-all.
Yeah, TELUS and cable. and
Well, then you
all
could
the-
say the same for the fire department training facility and take out 11.1.1.b, but okay, details. Okay, fine. So as long as we can accommodate future municipal use up there, anything like multifamily or clean tech or anything would require rezoning anyway.
Yes,
So
yeah.
yeah, that's fine. And we have the ability. We have within these definitions, we now have the ability to handle everything we can conceive of for Lions Bay in the conceivable future.
I think so, subject to council and public feedback.
Yeah. So enough on that one. I mean, I did.
Just one, Peter, including the fire training facility under infrastructure, we could do that
Mm-hmm.
and then take it out of the resource use zone. It would just be permitted.
It sort of sticks out a bit like a sore
Yeah,
thumb.
I know what you mean.
Mhm.
I acknowledge
Right.
that we were essentially doing, I think, what's done already in the existing bylaws. So I hadn't really.
It's wrong. Take that as a starting point.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, we could do that.
Yeah. I've just made a note of
Mhm,
that. I've
okay.
sort of tidies it up a
Right,
little bit.
yeah, okay.
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 So that's delete.
Just delete it. Yeah.
I
'Cause
just
if
want
it-
to find the section.
Just show me where it says where it tells us that infrastructure is a catch-all. Is it in the definitions?
Yes.
H-
Well, it's in the definitions, and then it's in. There's a specific section under general regulations 4.2, which is uses permitted in all zones. So it's 4.2.1D is infrastructure use under all zones, and that's on page 14.
And that infrastructure use under a D is as defined in the definitions. Infrastructure use means a use provided.
Yes.
And you feel that that definition is sufficiently broad? Because I don't see fire training facilities there, for example, or public
Well,
works.
that's what we're talking about adding.
Oh, you would add it into the
Yeah,
definition.
Yeah, so I was just looking for the reference for the minutes. So it's delete 14.1.1B. And include that in the fire training facility in the definition of infrastructure use.
Okay, so just to go back up one level, what's the process now? This goes to consultation, and do you fully expect to get a significant list of revisions, or do you typically not get any? Based on public input.
I guess it goes on the web afterwards too, Peter?
It's on the web
Somewhere we can
now.
Throw it in.
It's on the web now.
Well, we need to tell people that it's there, obviously.
Well, you sent that out to your email list, right?
No,
On
not
the
yet.
Friday
No,
update?
No, not yet. That would be this Friday.
Oh, this Friday.
Yeah.
That only
I
leaves.
saw it on.
Oh, no, we talked
No, it
about.
was last week.
It
Yeah,
was
yeah,
last
it was
week.
in last,
That's
yeah,
what
yeah,
I thought
yeah,
we're
we did.
we're
we did
saying
put
we're
a
gonna
notice
do
in
it that day
already.
after we've done it.
It went out on Friday?
Yeah.
It did.
Yeah, because I added subject
It's
to
kind of
council
buried.
Oh, yeah, of course.
approval.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you're right.
yeah.
Yeah, it was in the.
It's sort of buried after a bunch of other things.
Yeah.
It eliminate top billing, but
We should make it
We'll
top
make it
billing.
top
No,
billing.
that's- Move it up the priority. Okay, so that's
no.
good.
So it depends on the community. I haven't done anything in Lions Bay before, but the Sunshine Coast, they'll go through. Well, it's mainly been for community plans. They go through a very extensive consultation. When I worked in Pemberton, we did a very significant rewrite of the bylaw there. And we had a working group that met over a period of months. This one is, I think when people are typically want to see how their property is affected. 99%
Yeah,
of
sure.
people.
Yeah.
So we're in all likelihood, we're gonna show a map that fundamentally doesn't change much for anybody.
Yeah, yeah.
So from that perspective, there shouldn't be a big revolt over the new zoning.
Well, that's the first order of business. I mean, the second is I don't know if anybody will look at it strategically to see if it accommodates Lions Bay's plans. That's our job.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of detail, obviously. So, okay, that's good. So we don't really necessarily, I think it's correct to say, Council, that we don't really expect a huge amount of
I think it's a big
change.
big soft sell.
Yeah.
I think your strategic directions and your forward-looking planning is part of your official community plan.
Anyway.
And that will, and then this is basically cleaning up the zoning and getting the zoning bylaw into a workable document that you can use.
And 4 or 5 sticky little areas.
Yeah, so, yeah, there's definitely some issues that have evolved and come up over in recent times that this bylaw is looking at, and that'll
Yeah,
be
no.
what I will focus on when I give a presentation at that meeting.
Okay, that's good. So the fact that virtually every residential lot in Lions Bay today is non-conforming to the minimum lot size is not an issue. You mentioned it just now that you said you didn't want lots in Brunswick to be non-conforming to the zoning.
Citing, yeah.
To the,
Citing as far as setbacks from property lines. And
okay, so the fact that most lots in Lions Bay are about a quarter acre, and the zoning bylaw says minimum lot size is 2 acres, or the
Yeah.
hectare
Yeah.
equivalent, that's not an issue. Everybody's grandfathered.
Yeah, that only affects your subdivision, the ability to subdivide.
Yeah, okay, fine.
And we're taking an approach there of at least looking at a density bonus
Yeah.
provision, so
Yeah.
if people have the ability to subdivide, there may be something put back towards the community.
That's good.
But enabling subdivision down to maybe 800 square meters, which is a 8,800 square foot lot. That would be the smallest you would go, in
Yeah.
all likelihood.
Okay, so we have that power and flexibility, that's good. Carriage houses, do you make any,
No,
That was,
secondary suites is as far as we've gone with second dwellings on properties.
no, we spoke about carriage houses because it's a lot simpler for subdivision purposes, meaning you don't have to subdivide.
Mhm.
In fact, does anybody get to overlook a proponent's plan if we allow carriage houses? It's just a building permit issue, is it?
well, I mean, right now, you allow secondary suites, but only if they're
Within
part
the envelope of the current
principal-
building, yeah. This
part
is
of the principal building. So what you're talking about is detached secondary suites, basically.
yes and no. Also, we spoke last time about allowing that to be sold as a strata or
Well, then you'd be subdividing the property. So
Not-
you're either
not
subdividing
strata.
or not subdividing.
no,
A
it's
strata is a
one piece of
subdivision.
property and the
That's
yeah,
a
so it's-
subdivision,
strata is a subdivision,
yes.
but there's no. I had understood you, Steve, to say
Building strata maybe,
I'm talking about building strata. Yeah.
Still a subdivision.
yeah, but a building strata is not quite the same.
Under 4.5, 5, and 6, we are excluding anything such as a carriage house.
I know. But did we not say that carriage houses may provide flexibility to address a lot of our issues without the complication of subdivision and rezoning?
I think we had discussions with respect to secondary suites at the last meeting. I don't recall there being any consensus from council that we should be putting forward changes to the zoning bylaw such that we provide for detached secondary suites or carriage houses as to be used as principal residences without subdividing.
Yeah, we
It
did
might
talk
have
about
come
it.
up as.
We did talk about it specifically, and as I interpreted, council said, yeah, look at that and consider it, and
yes.
as a building strata. In other words,
I remember the discussion myself too, but I didn't remember getting any direction from council on that specifically, so still something we can do.
what I think we might want to do is, if council concurs and thinks it's worth the trouble, is to offer that as an option for inclusion. So really specifically black box it on the draft to people saying, do you want this option? Because the other option to provide some of the sort of strategic direction that council's giving is subdivision and subdivision.
The parameter for a carriage house that I could see, the first thing that pops to my mind is make it just a detached secondary suite with the same provisions. So a 90 square meter max.
That makes it very unappealing for your average proponent. For somebody with a large lot, why would they want to build a 900 square foot separate structure?
Well, carriage, otherwise you're just talking about 2 single family dwellings.
Yeah, yeah.
And if you've got
So
two
that- you're
single
not
family
talking about
dwellings, then
carriage
make them
house.
subdivide.
No, it just provides people the financial alternative, flexibility to do strata rather than sell their land.
So,
So they-
it's still subdividing. But so basically, my recommendation would be that if you're going to allow a second detached dwelling unit on a property other than a secondary suite, then make the people subdivide their lot. And make
Sure,
sure that,
that would
issues
be-
such as access and room for septic comes to mind. There's all kinds of issues that you
Exactly,
want to
so-
address. But by having it, by requiring them to subdivide, you can address, you have the power to address all of those issues. Otherwise, if you just have it as a permissible thing they can do, just go get a building permit, then all they have to do is comply with the building code, basically, in our building bylaw, and they'd be off to the races, and you basically have no control.
Well, we have as much control as we'd have under even if we allowed if the people subdivide, we still only can control based on the building bylaw and the BC building code.
No, do you remember the development procedures bylaw amendments that we just made have extensive provisions for things that they would need to do in order to subdivide?
Only
And
if they
there's all
sell their
kinds-
land. The reason
it's not if they sell, it's if they subdivide. Those are all things that must be examined and that we have control over in terms of ensuring that all the things that we want to make sure are addressed in anybody's plans to expand the scope of development on their lot are addressed. Otherwise, we have very little control.
I get it. Just let me finish this part, and then I'll let you say what you need to say, Steve. I get that, and I'm sure we can control carriage houses as well. The reason I ask about carriage houses, I know there are people with family parcels that may be more amenable to building a carriage house, meaning a second house, without losing their land, their family land. But monetizing the land a little better, having a house, obviously serves Lions Bay's issues to have an added house. The tax value is not as necessarily distinct, although presumably the assessment would go up. We don't add a tax parcel, that's for sure. We just re-divvy up who pays the tax. So, there's... What I guess I would like to understand is, do we want to offer that flexibility? Yes, I understand the conventional way is subdivision. This is new. I know our friends down south in Vancouver are doing it for the similar reasons that we want to. Let Steve speak first, and then...
I just wanted to say that if you provide for something like a carriage house under zoning, that does not guarantee people will be able to build the carriage house and simply come in for a building permit. If they still need to, whether they subdivide or not, they would still need to have the proper access. They would still need to have the proper servicing.
Septic.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So So that part doesn't really change. It doesn't, the zoning doesn't guarantee you,
Exactly.
because you're not
You still have your setback
predetermining the
requirements.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're not predetermining the suitability of any site, you're just saying this is possible.
Okay, so, yeah, sorry, Eileen.
I personally like the idea of limiting the carriage house to the suite size.
Nobody will build one. Who would
Well,
build a 900 square
the-
foot house?
Well,
The
that's what they
people
are,
who
though.
want-
That's what
In
Yeah.
Vancouver, yeah, sure.
But the people who want to retire, give their kids the house, and they have a little, like an indoor suite or something like
But
that.
it's not a suite, it's a separate house.
It's a separate house, but yes, some people may not be able to have a suite, but they could have a separate house. But I think if we limit the size, we're addressing the seniors who want to stay on their own land. And if you want two big houses, then you go the subdivision route.
Well, I'm thinking 1/3, 2/3. Nobody, I guarantee, is going to build a 900 square foot house, not in today's market. So, you know, if you limit it to a secondary suite size, although it's no longer a suite, it's just secondary dwelling, it can't be 90 square meters. I guess I had thought that council was very interested in that option for the flexibility it provides, but let's just take an around the table. What do you say, Brett?
Well, I'm thinking the subdivision thing is more attractive. As far as carriage houses are concerned, my understanding of one is where you have living quarters over a garage. So 900 square feet isn't really that exceptional.
No, that's a secondary suite in technical terms. Carriage house in zoning is a second house in the back.
Nothing to do with the garage then.
No,
So it's not really a carriage house.
it's not really. No, it's a second dwelling.
Well, this
Your
is a,
granny flat, you know, was a term
an
that
in-law
was
dwelling,
used
but
15 years
Yeah.
Just looking
ago.
for
Garden
size.
dwelling, there's been a number of different terminologies.
Yeah, laneway housing. Yeah, Peter's got the brochure.
from West Vancouver. I'm just looking for size restrictions.
I guess where well, I haven't finished the poll yet. You just came in, so you get to speak last. Eileen?
I like the idea of making them subdivide if they're going to do something extraordinary.
Okay, and Ron?
I was thinking subdivision because of all of our properties here, mine would lend itself most to building a secondary structure. I mean, and had I thought about it way back in the dark ages, I probably would have done that.
Well, you wouldn't have been allowed,
I
remember?
wouldn't have been
Yeah.
allowed, but I could have done it by going through the subdivision route and done
Oh,
things.
sure, yeah, yeah.
So I'm using my place as an example. I see that, to use that lovely contemporary term, granny flat, that, you know, I suppose we, you know, build the camp for Mary and I in the back 40, use the Mercedes-Benz of septic systems, water hookup, blah, 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 common down the driveway. I'm thinking here, I like the separation from a financial standpoint versus the traditional granny flat that there's the old broad living in the backyard kind of thing. So I'm kind of into the subdivision, but I can kind of see the flexibility for the,
Well, subdivision, for example, correct me if I'm wrong, you would need a separate driveway, for example, and a separate septic system.
I was counting on separate everything and maybe a common driveway, which is not
What's the,
too, that would probably be the only step that's out of bound, but.
what do we say
separate.
about that in this bylaw? Can you have a common driveway when you subdivide?
Doesn't say anything about that in the zoning bylaw, but if you were doing a building strata or a strata subdivision, the access is usually common.
The problem with that, excuse me, is that when you're building strata, generally speaking, when you're building the initial property, you understand that you're gonna have common driveway, and so that usually the building is as close to the roadway as possible, and the depth is greater. And so, like my brother lives in a strata townhouse, okay?
Yeah.
The lots are butted together and the buildings are joined in the middle, but their driveway is right at the street. And that's what you generally find in that situation. I think that, I like the idea of, you know, trying to restrict it as much as possible if you can, but the problem is that our properties may not lend ourselves to Ron's
Well, I'm a
situation.
one-of-a-kinder.
Yeah, you're one, and I might get away with it on my property, but I pretty much have to destroy my whole house and do it in the back,
Yeah.
so it wouldn't work. So, every property's gonna be different, and in my case.
Oh,
in your
I
case,
doubt
it's
there's
gonna be
more than 2
separate.
dozen candidates in Lions Bay for either kind.
Tops, yeah. And in fact, it's the only one that I can think of, which I think he has, if we kind of look at where we're here, and if we know who I'm talking about, I think he has several structures back there which would fit into the thing that.
He keeps owning his land, but
Yeah, and he's, you know, here's the big house here, and there's the
strata.
playpen
So-
out there.
So then, that being the case, we're doing this for a few homes in the village.
I think Carl's 24 would be
But the thing is,
optimistic at best.
so the case of the 900 square feet or less means you could go, and I could think of a carriage house as a top of carport structure and get away with it in my property, okay? And with a lot of properties to get away with that, so why would we restrict it to, I guess we could have both, but.
Well, I'm with you on this one too,
Yeah.
because I mean, if you use the traditional big topography, big footprint, okay, that's fine. But I mean, you brought another one too, which is, I mean, the carriage house is developing by the minute as people try and find creative ways to build space.
Well, my neighbor's got one, he built one in his.
So I mean,
in-
what's with
in his
it's
garage,
just the
yeah.
upstairs,
Yeah.
downstairs.
Take a note.
So back to this.
Yeah, so Peter,
From financially for me, I would do the subdivision, but that's just me that way.
Yeah,
But I
and
could-
we're looking to
but I
provide
could be-
flexibility to our residents.
But I would go with the flexibility that if, again, to use that lovely contemporary term, if somebody doesn't want to go through this, but wants to go through the building permit process, build it all up to code.
Well, it's another way of building an in-law suite too.
It's an inlet, it's a.
That's
yeah.
really what it is.
It's just
Yeah,
flexibility. But Peter, before we go too far down the rabbit hole,
So just in terms of looking at West Vancouver's detached secondary suites brochure, so what they call for in terms of max, you can have a 1 or 2 story structure. A detached secondary suite shall have a maximum floor area not exceeding the lesser of 10% of the lot area, or 111.5 square meters, which is 1,200 square feet.
yeah.
So it's the lesser of those two. And if you have a 2-story structure, the top floor cannot exceed 60% of the main floor. So that just sort of dictates a little bit of the design.
Why would you restrict the size of the second house? What would be the sort of the policy desire there?
Well, in most cases, laneway houses are that way. The second house is a lot smaller.
Yeah, but why do you want to make it? Why do you force it to be smaller? I mean, council's overall strategy here is to provide additional housing in Lions Bay so that we can share the tax burden amongst more people. Detached secondary suites doesn't do that. We don't increase the number of taxpayers. It's still the same one single taxpayer. His property is now worth more, presumably, and he pays more of the pie, but we haven't added taxpayers. Everybody's taxes will go down and his will go up. So I think it has the same impact. Am I right, Peter?
Well, presumably the person occupying the detached
Oh, he'll cover his
housing
portion of it. Yeah, yeah.
will be charged in a suitable amount to cover the increased value of the property in
Yeah.
total. But
But I think that where that errs is the fact that when you add one of these laneway houses or carriage house, whatever you want to call it, to the property now increases in square footage and building size. Therefore, the taxes are adjusted accordingly. It's not got nothing to do with it. The reality is the tax. The whole bunch of things involved in the tax equation.
No, it's not tax. It's his assessment will go up.
No.
Once BC assessment finds out about it.
Yeah,
That's
that's
all.
right. That's right, but eventually it will reflect back on his taxes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's good.
Yeah,
That's what
fine.
we want.
so he'll pay more than, say, the average.
Yeah, he
would-
won't be-
would have
yeah, he'll
paid
be changed.
otherwise, But
But he will be changing his tax rate, no matter how you look at it.
Yeah, that's the idea.
So another way to look at this is you're saying that the average lot size is about a quarter acre. So there's 4,000 square meters, give or take, in an acre. So a quarter acre is 1,000 square meters. For round numbers, it's easier to think that way. So in the residential zone right now, there's a 35% floor area ratio. So you've actually got a ceiling of 350
Square meters, yeah.
buildable.
3,500
So,
square feet.
so in answer to your question, if you look at it from that perspective, whether you divide that into one or two units isn't necessarily that material, because the floor area ratio talks about the overall mass of building on the property. And
Yeah,
so
that's
you-
when we were looking
so-
at Lions Bay's sort of suburban picket fence spacing. We are talking about a slight densification potentially for reasons that, policy
Well,
reasons.
if people are already up near it, like if they've got 3,000 square foot homes already, then they can't even get a 90 square meter.
None of those quarter acre lots would be candidates. It would be the ones that are not. And they're on the map, you can see them.
That are
And-
larger.
Significantly larger. Yeah, more like an acre and a bit.
Well, that's where we've been looking at, subdivision.
Subdivision. But laneway housing or carriage houses or whatever you call it, detached secondary suites are like the best of all. It provides them flexibility, especially for people who don't want to sell the family plot.
But if you're sticking it on a smaller lot as opposed to the larger ones, then you're gonna need to limit the size of the dwelling.
Well, we've got the coverage already. Whether it's detached or undetached.
Well,
And we're looking for two different things, right? We are looking for lower priced housing,
Yes,
for rental housing, and
both, yeah.
also increasing the tax base. This will increase the amount of tax, not another additional unit, but it will increase substantially,
Yeah.
probably, the amount of tax.
It'll bring in another taxpayer,
And it's
actually.
giving rental units.
Yeah, that's exactly right. The question is, do we just want to provide the subdivision route, or do we want to add the flexibility of detached secondary suites, which is really just allowing secondary suites to be detached, rather than, as the current requirement is, they have to be within the envelope of the house. But so, Steve, just advise, why does a municipality choose to limit the size of a secondary suite? Is it to preserve the density of the community?
Yeah, I think that's fundamentally it, is that the zoning has evolved out of post-World War II housing patterns where it was, one family, one house per lot.
Yeah.
And the Sunshine Coast has had two dwellings on small acreage lots. They've had zoning for two dwellings since the mid-'80s. When I started working there in 1990, I can remember that people were going, "Oh, you're just absolutely crazy to be allowing second dwellings." Nobody did it, and it was just a matter of, that was just the way it was. One house, one lot. So now, affordability has become such a greater issue, and just housing options for different stages in people's life cycle, as you mentioned, like people wanting to stay on their property, but downsizing, or for whatever reasons, people want more choices. So I think what we're talking about here is detaching a secondary suite from a house and allowing that within as a cottage.
Cottage is the best term, actually.
Yeah, that's what we.
Yeah.
So a cottage or something like that provides a similar option to a secondary suite, but allows it more of a separate existence, I guess. And if you're going to look at the lots that you're thinking are subdividable in the future, this zoning bylaw has kind of been working towards a whole scheme where you would be going through on a site-by-site basis and negotiating something with the property owners.
Yep.
It'd be so that not only would your tax base be enhanced, but you'd also be getting a little bit of an amenity contribution, and however that may work out
Right.
in the future.
Right. Whereas if we
So
went
you-
the cottage route, you would not have that negotiating.
You wouldn't trigger a density bonus, but if you allowed second dwellings just within your zone, then you're throwing out your density bonus provision, because you're just allowing it.
Unless we had a second kind of zone.
Well,
A cottage zone.
Well, even if those with large properties why would they subdivide if they can just stick another house on their property that doesn't have any restriction on how big it can be? They'll just stick another house on it. And
No, there needs to be a restriction. I kind of like what I'm hearing here, the 1,200 square feet. That then does make it a cottage. Because most houses in Lions Bay are around 32, 3,500 square feet.
It's a 3-bedroom home nowadays. 1,200.
Yeah.
The other reason for restricting the size would be, you've got a mature residential neighborhood or neighborhoods in Lions Bay, so if you don't restrict the size of the second dwelling, then you're really gonna see that density impacting neighborhoods, and people will complain that,
Yeah.
hey, this isn't what I bought into, what are you doing?
Well, exactly. I mean, that's what zoning is to protect what you bought into. So changing somebody's zoning out from underneath them is an issue. So advise us. Come on, speak up.
I think he's already painted
We
some
don't have-
options, it's council that's
I
really
don't
gotta
think we have a
determine.
standard situation in Lions Bay for a lot.
Exactly.
We don't have stamped lots like they have on Fourth Avenue in Vancouver or wherever the hell you are, doesn't matter, or in Surrey. Like the lot sizes are like cookie cutters, they're all the same. Every lot in Lions Bay is a different type of lot, different size, different shape because of the configuration. And so I look at Ron's house, I look at my house, I look at your house, and I'm saying, they're all built differently, and the lot sizes, they're like this and they're like that, and some are flat and some aren't. And there's gonna be no one formula, not one formula that's gonna work on each lot that you do. So you're gonna have to have a number of options to make it work.
Well, I mean, I think the issue between allowing cottages or not, or detached secondary suites to be technical, is really just to provide an ownership alternative for somebody who doesn't want to sell half their property or a portion of their property. Is that necessary? Is there a demand for that? I don't know. I'd like to provide people the option to comment on it, though.
What about,
I think.
What about the notion of providing that, you can't, under the zoning, you would not have the automatic right to have a detached dwelling, but you could apply for a variance, and in that process, that would give you the oversight to make sure that what's proposed to be built is appropriate to the lot, and any conditions that you may want to attach.
And would go to consultation, because I certainly want the neighbours to have a say on it.
And I
Could
don't know whether you could whether you could perhaps define that situation as being a change in density, so that it triggers density bonusing, or no? Couldn't really do that?
No, but I don't
Okay.
think fast enough to,
Yeah, I don't
deep
want
enough to have a.
I'm exactly the same. I'd need to take this away and think about it.
Opinion,
Yeah.
but I think the notion of a variance process, like to just detach, because we've got a provision in the bylaw that allows a secondary suite that's built. There's building code parameters around it. So that's a really good and standard way to approach secondary suites, is following the building code. So that's a good starting point for me. And then to say, okay, you're allowing that, to me, there's not really, other than it would encourage, I would actually think it would encourage the building of these if they were detached.
I agree.
Yeah, not that there's no market. I think there is a market, and that's why they're becoming so popular.
Can we just remove the requirement that they're contiguous?
Well, that's where I'm
Take that out.
going. I think that you can either do that. From my perspective, if the parameters were the same as a secondary suite, detaching it has no, other than probably seeing more.
Well, except that if you don't change any of the parameters, then you're talking about 90.
We'd have
Yeah.
to, we'd have to change the
Yeah.
size a little bit, I think, just to make it a little more market appealing. So maybe something like 1,200
So if you did that, then I would also argue that you might want to increase a lot size then.
Okay.
And say that you would need at least 1,000 square meters or something like
Okay,
that
fine,
to go to.
to even begin, to
Yeah.
do the detached option.
to
Because
do
there are...
larger than 90 square meters option.
Okay, yeah, that's good. Yeah.
Because I can see.
Quirky structures.
Well, I got friends in Gibson's who are building a laneway house on a very small lot, and they're going to actually end up living in that and renting out their house to pay for their house. They're a young couple with a young family.
They'd be hooked up to city sewer. So
Well, yes.
The septic.
Yeah, well,
issue
those are all,
becomes-
those are all,
You still have to pass muster on septic, yeah.
this discussion focuses around the concept and the idea of permitting these things. The approval process is something that is separate, so again, there's no guarantees on a particular property that the terrain is gonna facilitate it. You're gonna be looking, you know, since I've been working here, the parking issues have been front and center, so they'll have to show parking to be able to build anything new, or get a variance again.
Well, now we
So-
only require one non-tandem space per secondary suite currently
If
attached.
you're allowing a 3-bedroom house.
Yeah, it's gonna have to be
you
more than
have
one.
two parking
At least,
spaces for that.
yeah.
Well, that's all you allow for a house. Is
Or we require.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so I mean, yeah, we're not going to put you on the spot to actually formulate the thing in words right now, but I don't want to go willy-nilly, but do I see some nods around the table that we'd certainly like to present the option to the residents, to the voters, to the whoever it is that says something, whether they would like to see this alternative,
I think,
and with the details as discussed. I like the idea that to get a certain size, you need a certain lot size.
Yeah, I'm just penciling in 110 square meters,
Yeah.
about 1,200 square feet, on 1,000 square meters, about a quarter.
So that restricts it. That keeps it really cottagey. So it is very much the mom. That's where mom and dad move. They still own their land. They rent it out. Maybe it goes to the kids later. Who knows? Okay, so that adds some flexibility. That's good.
So I'll put that as a discussion.
I guess one thing that, like, what about, like, I could see people doing this as sort of a step one of a long-term plan whereby this is the first part, and then step two is, then they go and they apply for a subdivision because they want to sell part to fund the rest of their retirement.
Can that be done?
And the thing is that if we have that expectation that could happen, it would be good to deal with those expectations at the front end rather than after, when they get around to it 10 years later.
Yeah, good thinking.
And then we've got issues to deal with because of the way they, it wasn't a big deal where they put the detached cottage or the fact that they did that, but subdividing the property and access issues might be different 10 years down the road.
And now you're on somebody else's septic system, which they
Right.
may or may not maintain.
Right, they probably, well, okay, so I guess that's the question, is whether you would require a separate septic system for a detached dwelling that's 1,200 square
I think in most
feet.
cases where they think that could happen, that's probably logical to say you have to have a separate septic system, whatever the case is for that building.
Yeah, well, as I don't need to tell you,
In this day and age, there's nothing that says you can't put on the same size lot, two septic systems, or one that takes both, and treats it separately, because everything is nowadays so high-tech that we don't need the big fields and all that kind of stuff, which is what the restriction was years
Is that
ago.
true? Do we say anything about how many septic systems you can have on a lot?
Well, right now, that's restricted by field size and where the stuff's gonna go, but if you put an enclosed system on the property, doesn't matter.
I think the Ferrari of
Yeah,
septic
the
systems.
Ferrari,
I mean,
that's right, yeah.
Thinking of somebody
Yeah.
that,
Well, I know a couple
Literally,
of houses
the
that
grass
have
is about
got
twice
really
the size
high-tech
of this
systems
table.
in them.
Those are the
Yeah.
expensive new ones. I mean, I don't know how much you know about septic systems, but the new regulations require a field about 3 times the size as the old regulations, meaning most people's septic systems are now grandfathered to the old. Mine, I'll take mine for
Yeah,
example.
okay.
But to upgrade it, to even look at it, to even think about your own septic system, you have to bring the field size up. Most people don't have space, so they have to put in
$50,000
a
investment.
$50,000 machine.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So, but okay, I could see that a detached secondary suite needs a separate system against some future sale. How does it? I mean, you own your own strata, right? So you can bust your own strata, I guess.
Yeah, so that's what I would say. If someone came to me, and they've done, and I've dealt with a few of them, you have 2 dwellings on a lot. If you were building from scratch on a vacant property, or if you were doing a tear down and putting up 2 dwellings at the same time, both unoccupied, you can just file with the superintendent of real estate a strata plan. for those to create 2 strata lots. When you have existing buildings, you have to apply through the municipality to get approval to convert. So many years ago, the single purpose sort of rental apartment buildings were being carved up into stratas, and West Van, I think, had a moratorium on conversions for a while. So did some other places, because they were losing their rental housing stock, or they feared that. So you can do the same thing with a house and a cottage. There's a list of about 5 different criteria that need to be met. The existing life of the building, so the building inspector goes out and says, yes, if we create 2 new strata parcels here, there has to be a reasonable life expectancy for these existing structures. And then there's the access and other things, but essentially you're taking a situation as it exists today, and you assume that everything has been properly approved to get to that point where you're subdividing it. And you're subdividing the buildings, you're not subdividing the land, you're just creating a mortgageable entity out of each of the dwellings. And so they can be sold separately. It's not a common interest type of ownership situation. They're completely independent. And that's as close as you usually get because of the way that, you know, front to back construction and all the other different types of situations that occur that more or less preempt a subdivision into 2 lots.
I think that you touched on a relevant point earlier. You said post-war housing, the rules are all the same. The reality is that what we're doing is we're creating a situation where you don't need as much square footage for your lot because the house size is gonna, you're putting a smaller chunk on, you're dividing it up. The expectation is you need to have all this property, is you don't. You're changing that rule by doing this, by allowing this, and I think that's an important thing to remember. I'm just sitting here thinking, and I'm thinking about my property, and I realize, wait a minute, I could build a house in the front yard. No problem, I got a long driveway and lots of space. My house is set so far back in the property that it wouldn't make any difference. It would probably fit without a problem.
And to use you as an example, you'd be far more interested in doing that rather than subdividing.
Why do you think I'm talking about it?
Yeah. Well, exactly. I mean, it's a very attractive alternative, and I think Peter is right. We need to make provision for future subdivision, land subdivision, if people want to actually dispose of half their property or in 2 lots. But I think this provides us an extra level of flexibility. Oh, not us, provides people some flexibility. So do you guys have enough to be going on with to present that at least as an option?
Yeah, and then the detached, because I need to make notes. Detached secondary suites is also an option.
Well, whatever you choose to call it, whether it's a cottage or a detached secondary suite or a laneway house or carriage house, it's all the same
Well,
thing.
what if you don't have a 1/4 acre? If we're saying that you can have 110 square meters with a 1/4 acre,
Plus,
yeah,
more than.
yeah. But what if you're less than a 1/4?
Then
acre?
it's 900 square feet, 90 meters.
And that can be detached.
Yeah, I don't think you, if it works with all the other setbacks and whatnot. Yeah, why not?
Well, I want to hear because
Well, if
it's
it
a
works with all
choice.
the other setbacks, I mean, you keep on restricting it down to what ultimately won't make any sense.
Does each one of these go to, it's not a rezoning, is it? I would like the neighbors to have a say whether they want to see a little cottage in the backyard.
Okay, so that's with a variance and
Yeah.
so
So the neighbors will get their chance to the board of variance.
But couldn't you peg it as a certain percentage of the lot size?
Yeah, well, we have that today, 35%, right? So if it's going to take it over that, you can't do it. End of story. But if you can, go ahead. But I still would like the neighbors to have.
But if I mean, the reality is that would be a better way to go rather than pegging it at the 1,000, whatever, a 1/4 acre, and saying that if you're less than that, you can't do it. So the reality is, you could say if it's less than that, then you have to go to a formula. But
Wouldn't the 35% do it always, Steve? So if you have a 4,000 square, 4 acre lot, you can do 35% of that total.
yes.
it would probably work.
Why do we need this West Van threshold? Oh, well, they max it out. Oh no, because we want it to max it out.
Food for thought.
The lesser of 35% or 1,200 square feet.
You still like you're talking about a secondary house as opposed to two principal houses. I mean, so I think that's what we gotta keep in mind, like, we're talking about house plus cottage
Yeah.
as opposed to two houses.
If you want to build two houses, subdivide.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what that's,
Yeah, that's the spirit with which it's designed. That's right, that makes sense.
so, but you're saying that on the larger properties, the cottage, if you will, can be a larger cottage.
Up to
About
35% total. Maximum 1,200.
Yeah, that's what it would work.
That probably will work all right, yeah.
Okay, take that away and mull over it. Okay, let's move on. That was good discussion. Thanks. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with that actually, because that gives us. I've got a few more comments, but I don't want to be the only one talking. So who else got something? Craig.
Yeah, I think, I have an issue with 12.1 on page 32 to 36, about the water and marine foreshore usage. Under first point, 31 zone, the following uses and no others shall be permitted. 1A, it's got private mooring system or floating dock for use in conjunction with the principal building on the adjacent upland residential parcel. I have a real problem with that in that we have a good number of residents who have mooring buoys out there who aren't waterfront property owners. What I read into this is that unless you're a waterfront property owner, you can't have a mooring buoy out front. Is that correct?
It just means you have to have long mooring lines.
No, I don't think so, because we had this discussion already, and I'm just trying to remember exactly how that discussion went, because I made the exact same point. That there would be people who wouldn't have an adjacent upland parcel, but would still have, could still go get a buoy from
Well,
Transport Canada, right?
But the reality is that Transport Canada governs who can have a buoy out there for, under what conditions. That's the law of the land.
No,
okay?
we're talking about zoning that
And
area
we're
now.
talking, yeah, but zoning is a different thing. Does that mean that that would preclude someone having a? That's what Fred's question is. Would he be precluded? from
Because we have a
having-
new zone now, a W1 zone, which we hadn't had. This is new.
Well, it is and it isn't. Because we
yeah.
previously did have foreshore zoning.
Be careful with that.
Well, yeah. Okay. So what's the answer? Or do we need another clause? Private mooring buoy.
I think the one that here, in reference to the floating dock, makes perfectly good sense for a principal building on the adjacent lot. Whereas I don't think people should be plopping floats all over the place, but if somebody wants to put a float out in front of their property,
Yeah.
I think they should be able to. But as far as, I would think another, I don't know if you want to call it a second A, since you've got two Cs. Sorry.
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
Don't make me snide.
No, that's,
But if you put in private mooring system for residents permitted,
Well, the residents.
well, they should be residents.
Yeah, how the heck are you going to enforce that one? And I bet you half the people out there right now are not residents. They just stuck a buoy in Lions Bay. But
Well,
I don't know if we can do that. But
Yeah, well, the Canadian navigation laws say that you have to have your name, address, phone number on your buoy.
yeah, we're not going to go out there and check the name and say this is not a resident. But I don't care whether it's a resident or not. If they can get permit from Transport Canada, good luck to them. But that would then conflict with B, because it would no longer be short term.
Yeah, we want
I think
to.
that's where we may have actually messed ourselves up a little bit.
You may have to
Because I
lose
know-
B. You may have to lose B.
No, B is
Well,
necessary
With the houseboat thing, I know.
because no, you have to allow B because it goes to the core of federal jurisdiction with respect to more buoys. So you cannot, notwithstanding your right to zone the surface of the water, you cannot restrict short-term moorage to buoys at all. And short-term has been defined in case law as somewhere around 48 hours. So we went with 72, but I mean you could go as low as 48 hours and have a case that you could point to justify it. I wouldn't go any lower than 48 hours, but somewhere in that 48 to 72 is what you'd want to have there. And that just basically, if it's challenged, you can point to that and say we're not trenching on federal jurisdiction where this is about.
But how do you allow seasonal moorage for months? Maybe you just split clause A up
You
into
can-
private mooring systems and B, floating docks.
Yeah, because you'll note that floating docks in 12.21C references that they must be within the boundaries of a water lease or license of
good,
occupation
yeah.
granted by the province.
Can I just ask, while we're discussing this, the appurtenance that affixes the dock to the land, is that discussed here? And I think I mentioned it in passing last time. I know that was an issue in the regional district because Ocean Point and Strachan Point realized that the concrete structure that is the land end of the walkway onto the dock was actually breaking the zoning in every case. Do we talk to that?
I think the intent was that you cannot have that's a dock. That's not
It's a
floating-
structure,
that's
but the
a-
issue was always the setback requirement. The thing was within the setback because it was on the property line. And
But-
so they were actually breaking the setback requirement.
Our understanding is that you can't have structures in Lions Bay that attach to the land because they just get wiped out by the winter
There may be a
winds.
special case, I don't know. I don't want to rely on the weather to enforce our bylaw.
No,
or not.
but I think I'm just looking for it here. Help me out, Steve.
Well,
I thought
first
that
of
we
all,
were restricting it to simply floating docks and buoys, which is only anchored to land through the water cable to the bottom of the ocean bed, not to the foreshore.
And the thinking was that if someone was wanting to build a dock that was be able to survive the winds that are happening today out there, that they would seek approval rather than just as a right being able
To
build
force them to
something.
come to us and ask for a variance.
Yeah.
I'm fine with that.
Rezoning.
There's only one dock right now in Lions Bay. It's on a water lease. It may even be marked on the map there. Yes, it is. And it's just a swim dock. It's not a boat dock. I mean, what use is a boat dock if it's not connected to the land with a walkway? What, you're
Yeah, I
supposed to
think
get another
That's
tender?
any restriction in the use here.
But I think, back to the point here, is I think we need to go back and take a second look at this, that we may have had, in doing some other revisions, we may have had some unintended consequences.
Okay, good.
Because I recollect some discussion of these terms, it was more around houseboats, the length of time. And I think we had this private mooring and short-term mooring, but then we started attaching hours to it. And
Okay, good.
and
That's
so residents, so it may be, and Peter and I'll discuss this a little further
yeah.
offline.
It should be relatively easy to fix, just to get it logical.
Yeah, because
Also
I think
about-
what we'd be looking at is just deleting the, but we'd have to look and see if there's any implications, deleting that reference to adjacent property owners.
Yeah, maybe just take it out.
Yeah, delete that.
Yeah. Also on boats on 10.2 on page 30 of 36, the permitted uses in the C2 zone, which is commercial marina, it says boat storage. There's also maintenance, there's launching, there's washing, there's all the other things that you do with boats.
Sorry, I missed what page we were
It's on page 30 of 36 on our package. I don't know if you have the same number of
Yeah, I did.
Oh, you do? Okay. 10.2.1.a. Boat storage is not all they do at the marina, or is this the part of the marina where you're not maintaining and launching boats? Because I notice you launch boats somewhere else as well.
Yeah, what I did here was just combine about three or four separate zones that apply to that one marina. And didn't change anything, because I thought there had to have been a reason why. And I haven't had an opportunity to discuss with anybody yet who would have the first-hand knowledge of how the zoning evolved in like north and south of Rundle Creek and so forth.
Yeah.
So I just left it as is.
Okay. Well, I think there's more to it than that. Although if you look in 10.1.1, it says boat rental operations, marine fuel installations, marine land facilities, boat hoists and launching ramps.
Yeah.
That's all what they do there.
Yeah.
Does that conflict with permitted uses? Those are principal uses.
Well, you see, that's where they have an area, and there's under this. I got it here.
It's multiple little
There's three different. Oops.
on the map. Okay.
There's
Okay.
three
okay.
different marina zones.
Yes, that's what I'm asking. So this
So
one
what
here
I did
for
was I rolled them all into one zone.
gotcha.
But there's separate areas within that zone that are more restrictive, and they only allow the office use and something
Fine. Okay.
else.
So we really need to bring this one to the attention of the marina to make sure that
We've reached out, but we haven't.
No,
heard
they
back
go on
from
holiday
them.
from the
I have a
15th to
feeling
the
that would
15th.
also be neighbors who
Oh.
would have maybe been concerned about.
There's no neighbours down there. This is all to do
Well,
with.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's good. So that's fine like it is, but definitely the marina owner needs to be talking about that. Although I do want to ask about 10.1.2, accessory dwelling. What's an accessory dwelling?
A residence for a caretaker.
Ah.
Uh,
Is it defined?
accessory is something that is associated with the principal use.
Secondary suite, detached.
Yeah, it could be a little.
But it's not an R2 RS1 zone. So
Could be a home for a caregiver.
okay, fine.
Caretaker.
I thought that accessory structures were like sheds and stuff like that.
Well, this is dwelling. That's what I. Yes, accessory structure. Yeah,
Accessory dwelling.
Dwelling, oh.
that's a
Is
standard
used in
definition.
in conjunction with the principal use.
Fine. Okay, so Ken definitely needs to probably go through that with a fine-tooth comb. You're probably going to need to sit down with him specially, actually.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got defined, we have accessory use, building or structure. And we don't have accessory dwelling.
Well, it's an accessory use. It's accessory structure.
Don't we allow accessory uses as secondary uses
Not
throughout the
dwellings.
residential?
Not dwellings.
But if we don't distinguish between a dwelling and a building,
Well, by the very words you do.
But
If
if
a
we're-
dwelling is defined,
Dwelling is defined, yeah.
okay, but if we're, I guess my concern is that if you're saying an accessory use could be a secondary suite, is that what you said, or no?
well, it could be a suite within the office building if it was 2 floors or something. You're allowed one dwelling. It's very typical, like in a light industrial property or something like that, that you might have a resident caretaker that's an isolated location. So that's really what it is. We could use language like caretaker dwelling, but it just allows a dwelling on that property.
Okay, well, you guys need to work that out with the map still. I mean, we haven't seen the map. I just, what's actually happens down there is there's a marine mechanic, separate business, commercial property, owned by somebody, whoever, it doesn't matter. Then there's a workshop for the marina and a storage area, which is really the garage for the residents above, the dwelling above, because the marina owner lives on the property in his
Yeah.
house. Then there's sort of an office building within the fenced area of the marina, and then all the sheds and so on and so forth. As long as we don't restrict any of that now, that's fine.
Well, it's not changing to the best of my ability. It was just trying to put it into one zone,
fine,
and
yeah.
for the life of me, I don't know why a single business like that would be partitioned into several separate zones.
It was
So-
because some of them are leases from the province and some of them are owned. And some of
Also,
them,
some of that property is not owned, and it's got a crown lease that says a specific use only.
maybe it's the
Oh.
Crown said it, I don't know who said
Okay.
that. But that's, there are multiple parcels down there. And some are actually owned by the village and used by the business and vice versa. So for example, the top half of our beach park is actually owned by the marina, for example.
Okay.
Yeah, there's sort of a sharing agreement that was created years ago that said allowed that, and it's sort of grandfathered from time.
So
there.
Let's hope it's grandfathered.
So officially on paper,
Well, that's what we're talking about, right?
yeah, because I
Officially
know
on
that
paper,
he's got
written on
these
the back
little
of a
lines
cigarette
that say
card
we're
years
not gonna
ago.
store any boats across this
Probably lost it.
imaginary line on the property. That's kind of the way I was looking at it. But if
Yeah.
you've got a lease, then you have to go through a very long and convoluted process with the province to amend a lease if he's got a lease that allows only, like the foreshore would definitely, the water part, I get that, because that's gonna be leased. And so the crown lease will, it might just say commercial marina though.
Yeah.
But you're gonna have two separate zones for this, the water use and then the land use.
Yeah.
But then it's usually an integrated operation in some ways, even if aspects are,
Well, if you didn't break anything in the zoning that was in the current zoning bylaw, I presume that was covered. The province was probably happy with it as it was, but that's why you see all these funky.
okay, well,
Different
and I tried to, I just packaged it differently.
Yeah, I see that.
Yeah.
Certainly, the marina needs to look at it. So let's move ahead quickly. You define a household as a whole bunch of people related by blood, marriage, common law, etc., or a group of not more than 3 unrelated persons.
Yep.
There's any number of households, I can name at least a dozen off the top of my head, that are way more than 3 unrelated persons. Do we actually want to say 3? What's the reason for that?
There's 3 or 5 are the numbers that are typically used.
What's the policy desire there?
Prevent overcrowding. The policy desire originally was, again, going back to kind of the days when we were all young, was that it was a family. And you didn't have provisions for unrelated people at all sharing a dwelling.
Yeah, well, you used to have to.
So-
we used to say what their skin color was too. So those days are gone.
So yeah, so now it's again, usually parking will be a determinant to say 5. 5-bedroom home is as big, or 3-bedroom home.
but so a
also-
5-bedroom home that's rented out by its owner
Yeah, you're gonna have 5 cars at least.
and
parked
5
in
unrelated
the
persons.
Yeah.
So they'll be breaking the zoning bylaw.
That's why it's set at 3.
So we just find them.
Set it at a smaller amount because of the issues that we have with our terrain and
Yeah,
so
but you can't
forth.
tell a 5-bedroom house owner that he can't rent his house to 5 people. Can you?
5,
Yeah, you could do that.
this is
I mean,
3 unrelated people.
Hmm.
Yeah.
There's at least 3 on my street, where,
But,
including one of our employees.
but when you think about it, like when a person builds a 5-bedroom home, the idea is they build it for their family, or whatever the case is. And then when the kids move out,
Now what are they going to do?
now what are they gonna do? So they rent out the rooms. I mean, that's what happens. So.
It's not a
is that
secondary suite.
unreasonable?
It's just a house, and they're
It's a
renting.
house, yeah.
So in other words, it's 3
We can't-
too restrictive.
We can't impose something unreasonable on the owner of the house if that's what's happening.
I would like to make it 3, but for parking reasons and septic and everything. But I don't think we can do that. I think that's too
I think
restrictive.
5's,
Well, 5 is the
5's the
other.
other number.
Okay, so maybe it's 5. Okay.
Yeah,
I think-
those are the
I
only
think
2
going-
numbers you see in zoning
Going north of
bylaws.
5, we're starting to get into a
Oh, then it's a boarding house.
whole
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
thing going on here.
No, then we don't speak about community systems like community septic, well, it's only community septic, community heat. That would that be a zoning thing, or would that be a building bylaw thing? I mean, I'm thinking, for example, in the future subdivision that we're going to be seeing in Kelvin Grove, how would we require a community heat system? Why do I care about community heat? Because we are going to, at some point in the foreseeable future, be required to meet carbon targets. So if we can point to the fact that we mandate community heat,
Or you're talking geothermal now? or-
yeah, or something, but a community one, so that we can say, look, we've done away with 30 heating systems and replaced it with one highly efficient one. Where would we mandate that?
At the time of rezoning, you would have that as a condition or an amenity or something like that.
Okay, fine, so we don't need to put that in?
It doesn't need to be in the bylaw.
Can we include commonly used measurement units in the text of the law, like acres and feet? I know that we're metric. Do we open ourselves up to accusations of inaccuracy because nobody knows what a hectare is, but everybody knows what a quarter acre is?
You just pull out your cell phone, you just look at the converter and say.
What's a
But
cell phone?
I can tell you real quick, you don't need to know. Yeah,
Hectare
that's true.
is-
That's exactly
What's the
right.
conversion factor? You don't even know.
It's a
It's on
function on
Google.
my BlackBerry.
Where's your back-
Did I say
Google?
BlackBerry?
It's about 2 to 1.
Your black what?
We've been metric for what, 30 odd years?
Yeah, come on. We
And
were
everyone
converted to
around this
metric when
table
I
is
was a
talking
kid.
square feet and
Oh,
acres.
I know. I
So,
I never converted, but
I mean, I would.
Well, I can talk both languages. But my kid doesn't know feet,
no,
which is-
my
Yeah.
my send us?
I would like to
Do
see,
that.
I would like to see commonly used, so that people can actually read the bylaw.
No, these are the way they're done these
Okay,
days.
fine, so forget it.
If you wait another 100 years, it's not gonna happen.
Whose diagrams are these? Do we have the right to put them in our document?
He's done a disclaimer at the front.
Yeah.
You have? I missed it, okay, fine. I like the
I
diagrams.
put in an information thing.
A few more. If you're,
I did not seek direct permission from West Vancouver to use their little,
are we okay with that?
I think we're okay.
Corporate officer,
To use which one?
diagrams,
That's fine.
The diagrams.
Which, both the diagrams?
there's about 4.
Yeah, they've been modified, but they're.
Well, there you go, they've been modified, so.
Oh, then we stole it and plagiarized it, that's even worse.
Plagiarized.
It's like sampling music.
That's great.
Yeah, that's illegal too.
You're on a roll.
Okay, let's.
Two more things to go, you're on a roll.
Well, I mean, this is a zoning bylaw. We've got a 4.18. The roof connection details have been approved by a structural engineer. This is for solar energy devices. The guy has to get a structural engineer to put a solar panel on his roof, and how are we going to check that?
So that's the way these things are going. That was brought up by building inspector. My concern was whether or not this is appropriate for the zoning bylaw, or whether it should simply go in the building bylaw.
Yeah.
Where
But
were
we
you?
threw it in for discussion.
4.181C,
4.1.
page 23 of 36.
Oh,
That was one of
I was
those,
looking for
last
4.1,
minute,
boy.
yeah, it was one of those last
Yeah.
minute additions that we put in there. 4 point what?
4.18.
4.18.1.
23.
Item C.
That's what
Well,
it is.
that's, I mean, in some cases, that would put you beyond the building code requirement for a roof structure, so that's why it's in there. That makes sense.
But do we really want that?
Well, you'd have to do it.
Uh-oh.
Really?
Well, because if you're overloading the roof, like in
With the
British
solar
Columbia,
panel?
in the lower mainland, roof structures are designed for a load of 60 pounds per square foot, period.
Yeah, it's
That's
apparently amongst the
Oh.
technical committee
Penfolds
of the
sit
building
on a
inspectors,
cellar
this is
service
becoming a
tank?
concern.
Okay.
Is that they can fly
I
off
don't- never really
and
thought of it.
cause
the building
injury
code.
to others.
It's designed
So
for snow.
if they're
lower
not,
mainland.
if they're not properly
Yeah,
designed.
it's actually not the load, it's the connection.
Yeah, it's the
Okay, that's
connection.
good. Well, so now you just need to decide if it's within the zoning bylaw or the building bylaw.
Yeah, that's
Fine.
something that we can still.
Okay, right below that,
Uh,
17 meters setback of the natural boundary of a watercourse.
That's what you got now.
That's, Fred, you're breaking the new bylaw.
So am I.
So are you.
I don't
So
know
am
why
I.
17, like typically the Ministry
we're
of
one
Environment
meter.
is 15.
Well, 17, what's that in feet? What's that in feet, Mr. Blackberry? Because that's going to be a round number in feet.
15
60.
meters is.
50 feet.
50 feet.
Yeah, it's going to be, it
50,
would have
60
been
feet,
50 feet.
56 feet or something. I don't
That's
know.
60 feet, they call it 60 feet.
Maybe it's 60, it's going to be a round number. But anyway, that, there's nobody in Lions Bay that meets that today. 3 of them
Would
sitting
they if
around
it
this
was
table.
15?
4.
Would they if it was 15?
5, probably.
Would they if it's 50?
Would 6 feet make a difference?
Not to Fred.
Not
Because this is the
really.
boundary of the watercourse, eh? The boundary is also defined to do with the center line of the water stream and blah, blah, blah. and all
Well, there's
this.
also, when you talk boundary, there's a whole different.
This is not the river itself.
Yeah.
200-year flood level.
Yeah, something like that. I mean, it's wide.
Well, I just know that we've got a creek running a meter from our master bedroom.
Uh-oh.
And, well, it does
Well, should
no
you be
problem
admitting
because
this in
the
public?
house was built for it. There's a pathway there, no chance water coming through the house. Not
Yeah, but you're
gonna
breaking
happen.
the zoning
Well,
bylaw.
there you are.
No, it's
exactly.
not, because
It's
it's the.
grandfathered.
it's
I-
legally
But it's
non-conforming.
the structure's been built around.
But I think this
But-
is going to be too restrictive for Lions Bay.
But if
Well-
15 is normal, should we at least change it to 15?
Well, yeah, that's, however,
Steve, guide.
this is going to be very restrictive in Lions Bay.
I think it's gonna be, cause a lot of problems.
Well, that's,
So-
if somebody actually looked at it, that'd be half of your questions on the Thursday.
I guess the question is, of the remaining undeveloped lots, does it present an issue?
Well, this watercourse is not even marked on this map, don't forget.
Mm-hmm.
Including the one right through my, I'm on Harvey Creek, so you get me, because I'm not going to do anything.
Our ours is not.
Yours is not on the map, Jim, for
Because
example.
it-
Yeah, oh, actually,
it-
that's not true. Here it is here. It's unnamed creek.
Yeah, it's unnamed creek, that's the one, yeah, that's it.
It's a good name.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is its actual name, by the way, according to John Dudley.
Well, then it's not a name.
So, yeah.
Is it a creek?
To answer your question, Peter, I don't know.
It's a creek with no name.
I mean, if we're talking
Oh, but
about
it has a
development
name.
here, it's going to be a problem. If we're talking about development here, there's creeks all through here.
Yeah, there are.
As you know, we walked through that the other day.
Bridges
If we're
across all
talking
of
about
it.
development, there's creeks everywhere, Peter. So it's going to be a problem.
Well, I think the concept is sound, because with the Alberta Creek debris touring, there's houses wiped out and everything, so it's, just because we haven't had one for a while doesn't mean we're not gonna get some sort of debris flow.
But that's a building code issue, or
No,
building.
this is a, at least partly a planning and zoning issue.
Okay.
So what I would say is, since those disasters in the early '80s, a lot of work was done on the
On those
creeks.
particular creeks, yeah.
Like right down through school, well, from here south anyway to Horseshoe Bay.
Yeah.
But you want to stick with the provincial standard on this and then do variances if appropriate. Otherwise, you could be into huge liability.
Okay.
This is a provincial standard. And in the past, like it used to be an absolute requirement of the province. They kind of backed away from a lot of their flood sections for river flooding and things like that. They've downsized them.
Oh,
But
actually, just
you
scratch
don't want
off.
to go less than that.
I missed out on the second part of the definition of watercourse, a drainage area of 2 square kilometers or more.
So I was going to say
That excludes
little
most of
one-
the small ones.
Some of the unnamed ones may not.
Okay, fine. Okay, I'm
But
good
we're
with that.
going, we're going to 15, not 17?
So what's the provincial standard?
15.
15?
Well, that's the minimum standard. They, like in some places, they have 15 and 30.
Is-
So, but 15 is the default.
But, excuse me, but is that gonna impose something that's a problem in this village? That's my only concern. I don't wanna be imposing a problem.
I don't think so, because of this 2 square kilometer drainage thing. The small creeks don't even count.
Okay,
And 0.6 meters below the natural grade. 0.6 meters is 2 feet. It's, well, all creeks are that, because even the small creeks going through Centennial are way more than 2 feet below grade, but they don't have drainage areas of 2 square kilometers.
Sorry, where'd you get the 2 square kilometer?
It's in the definition.
It's in there, it's in the definition of watercourse.
And that's the Ministry of Environment definition.
Yeah.
It's interesting because a new bylaw sort of shines a light on all of the existing provision, because this has actually been in your bylaw for many years.
well, I'm thinking
So
about it.
it's,
I'm thinking about it, and when our property was built, the creek was running through it.
Yeah.
And when they built the house down below us, they diverted the creek down below us.
To meet the
And
bylaw.
well, no, the joke about it is that you didn't really, all they did is divert the surface water, it didn't divert the creek. Most of the water
Yeah,
in the
it's
creek
still-
runs underground.
Yeah.
And guess what? They've got nothing but, their house is gonna be demolished pretty soon because it's got nothing but water problems, has been for years. And so it's just, the creek is where the creek is. You can't move a creek that easily, so.
Right.
Is it true that people know, or can be told, you can always apply for a variance
yes, you can always apply for
on any of these provisions?
Yes.
Okay.
Pretty much. You can't, the rule under the Local Government Act is you cannot vary use or density. So you can't allow, like in your residential zone, you can't give a variance to allow a second house, you've got to rezone for that. And the density is the number, like the number of dwellings, you can't vary, allow a commercial use in a residential zone through variance.
All the hardship areas, the clear one.
The way you would deal with the creeks, and we're going to attempt to do it in some way, is you usually do it through development permits. And you usually have some kind of, and there have been geotechnical studies done here in the past. I haven't got my hands on any of them yet to have a look. But I know there was some broader ones done in the early '80s in the aftermath of M Creek and all that. But you could get, and like an engineer that would specify on specific creeks and specific circumstances, they could recommend setbacks, and then they would recommend the mitigation that would be adequate to render the site safe for the use intended. And that's always the magic words. And that kind of specific study would then kind of preempt or supersede the general 15 meters. If they said you can go 5 meters back if you do this, this, and this.
Before we bought out here, I was looking at a lot in Deep Cove, and the one problem was it had a creek running right through the middle, and everybody was steering away from it, and I looked at it, and I said, I'm gonna talk to an engineer, and I did, and he said, oh, that's no problem, we do this, this, and this, and I had house house plans drawn, and it was just that it made more sense to move out here than to go there and go through all that.
But you would have had to
But the
apply
house
for
did
variance.
eventually get built, and it's still there in Deep Cove, and it's got this, the water course running right through the middle of the house,
So
underneath.
65 Brunswick, for
Engineered
example,
structure, yeah.
would fall afoul of this. Because remember, it's from the natural boundary, it's not from the creek itself. So
Yeah.
I know from having seen the development plans at this piece of land here, the natural boundary is wide. It's tens of meters away from the middle of the stream.
Yes.
And so we're talking about an additional 15, 17
Yeah,
meters.
that's right.
But in cases like that, your building inspector would be asking for a geotechnical report, anything in
Right.
proximity to the
That's right.
creek, and it would be dealt with.
I haven't asked, but I bet you our house has got it.
Okay, I have one more question, which I'm sure everybody will be pleased with. What reference, if any, have you made to Anmore and Belcara's work on their zoning bylaws?
I've spoken with their planner, who was working on a draft.
Anything we
and-
can plagiarize?
We haven't actually exchanged the bylaws yet. I spoke with him just before Christmas, and
They're liable to lose all their bylaws pretty soon if they put that new bridge across there. It's gonna go down the toilet.
Okay, that's all I had. Anybody else?
I got another one here, about the, 4.15.1, parking of commercial and industrial vehicles within primary function. I'm still uncomfortable, I remember mentioning this at our last meeting, the discussion of industrial vehicles. And it's got the list of things, but not all of those things are industrial, and I was just wondering if we could have a definition of what exactly an industrial vehicle means in the bylaw.
I think,
Like, for those people with, you know, little...
Bobcat?
well,
Yeah, a little Bobcat or something, but, you know, if you got a 225 cat excavator or something like that, that is an industrial vehicle, there's no question about it.
We did say we needed to tighten up on that, you're right.
Um,
We had something about 4,600 pounds.
It's right here on page
probably,
21.
probably
Yes,
what it
that's
is.
Page
Yeah.
21, that's actually
Yeah.
my
Right,
question.
kilograms, yeah.
Kilograms.
So yeah, a little Bobcat's gonna be less than that, I think.
So that's just on the
Well, that's
no-fly
not,
zone.
but is that a commercial vehicle?
or industrial. I think the focus and the contentious issue in the community is industrial vehicles, not so much commercial vehicles.
Uh-huh.
I think commercial vehicles hopping up and down our hills is no big issue, but when you get this massive big stuff sitting for long periods of time, we're going up and down.
Are you picking
People
any
are-
particular one resident?
Trying not to.
Oh, okay.
Well, also commercial, Fred. I mean, there's a guy up near Mountain, I think, who parks a big, almost a delivery truck. We would probably want to try and control, on behalf of the neighbours. You don't want a delivery truck parked there all the time. There's a guy who parks his metro truck down here every time, but I know what the reason
Yeah,
for that is.
right,
It's
yeah.
because of the insurance. Once he leaves the metro regional district, he's not allowed to in a metro truck. So he has to park in Lions Bay because he lives in Squamish. And there's a few more commercial vehicles. Well, there's one that's been parked outside our village hall.
Landscaper.
Yeah.
You don't want to not allow people who need it for work or are driving like an on-call vehicle, an emergency plumbing or whatever. They do need to park somewhere. But I know on our street, we get a great big, it's a big truck with
What is it?
seafood or.
Alligator Fisheries are one of those guys.
I
But
don't know
used
what
by
it
a
is,
resident. I mean,
and-
that's where he parks his.
Well, we don't know.
Just sits there.
It sits there for weeks, but
Well, there may
it's
be a
had
parking, but-
nasty letters on there.
I mean, the issue is we obviously don't want a guy who's a long haul trucker parking his 18-wheeler outside his property. And right now,
Correct.
I think he's allowed to. What's stopping him? Anything, Peter?
Can't turn it around.
Yeah, there's
That's a
that.
minor detail. You can do it once and then you're in trouble. Yeah.
But I think we want to talk about that.
Well, I guess Eileen's example is actually the best one that's visible. Your situation is invisible.
But you don't want to say to a plumber or like somebody who's on emergency
I think a
service that they
cargo
have
van
to
is a
take
little
the.
different than what you're talking about.
Yes, yes, that's
I
true.
mean, the landscaper guy, I don't know where he lives, or, I don't know what his story is.
Well, the thing is that if he doesn't live in the village, why are we letting him do it?
I don't know if he does live in the village.
Well, I assumed for the longest time that's he couldn't get out of here because of the snow, but now it seems that he's found a convenient parking space.
Yeah, I think that's what it is.
It's not that we have an abundant supply of those either.
Well, not outside the hall for sure. I mean, that's cheeky. But
Call the bylaw guy, get a ticket on it.
but anyway, but Fred, is your concern not addressed by point 3 and point 4?
By the weight.
That might work.
Is your vehicle licensed? A little Bobcat?
The excavator?
Yeah.
Doesn't go on the road.
Yeah, it doesn't need to be.
Doesn't need to be.
Doesn't
like-
need to be.
Doesn't even need to be insured.
So then, a commercial person would license it because they do travel on the road. So
Or maybe say license. You
Aren't
restrict
you-
licensed
are you
vehicles.
bounced out because of that? It's it's not licensed.
You know, why do we license a rubber track vehicle if it's only gonna stay on your property?
Yeah, Fred doesn't need to license it, but why don't we restrict only licensed vehicles? Because those are the ones that are going on the highway.
I thought we were.
Where does it
I
say?
think on this
Oh, it
one,
does,
it's
yeah.
right- I think it's captured right here in this
Yes.
licensed commercial, and then the weight's got it,
Yes.
so it's double barrel.
Well, this is saying that basically the rule, the starting point is you can't park them on your property.
Yeah.
The exclusion in, the exception in point 3 is saying, well, unless you have one licensed commercial vehicle, as long as it's not more than 4,600 kilograms.
GVW, yeah. Operated by a resident of the parcel. That's right. So you can't park your friend's backhoe, small backhoe.
So if you don't fit in that description of the exception to the general rule, then you wouldn't be allowed to. So maybe it's too prescriptive.
Let me just understand procedurally. Are we going for readings at this coming council meeting?
No, I
No.
don't think so.
Okay. So this has still got a long way to go.
This is going to
Well, our
public
target is
info
to have the bylaw adopted by March.
the end of March.
So not that long away, but it might be intense.
2.5 months. Yeah.
Yeah,
But I mean,
yeah.
yeah. 2 months.
We wanna
that's-
have the public info meeting and see how that goes, and if that goes without sort of major incident fairly smoothly, then we could go into readings and then go into public hearing, and then if you needed to have a second public hearing, you would do that.
And what form would the public meeting take? Not the hearing, but the meeting on the 17th.
Just, could I?
19.
Yeah. Sorry.
Just in follow-up on the industrial vehicles, with commercial vehicles, we had this threshold of gross vehicle weight or something like that. I don't know enough about industrial equipment or materials to know if there's some way of distinguishing between what I would, like if I saw a big backhoe on someone's property, I would instantly see if it's a residential neighborhood, this is a problem. If I saw a bobcat, I'd think, that's just like a big,
It's like a snow blower.
yeah, it's not something that would immediately say, oh, that's construction equipment. You know, tractor, like I'm thinking heavy equipment, and something that might be, just a regular person would have, like, if someone started collecting, especially several pieces of equipment on a property, that would be the only way I would see it ever becoming like a bylaw issue, where your bylaw guy or woman is going to go out and start saying you need to start dealing with this because it's an inappropriate site. So if, I don't know, is there a way to, because there's so many different forms of equipment, and is there sort of some kind of scale or capacity or size that?
Ugliness
would act-
factor. Can we define ugliness and then
Well, yeah,
allow
Well, I'm
certain?
just wondering.
You
You're
could have
talking
somebody
about,
that does these recreational motorcycles with, tires the size of a refrigerator and great big honking engines. And would you rather look at that, or would you rather look at Fred's Bobcat kind of thing and say they're kind of about the same size? I think we're really splitting hairs here.
but I think that combined with weight capacity licensing,
I think we got this right here.
I think it's fine.
Well, that's what I'm wondering,
Yeah.
because I think if you could park it in a garden shed or something like that, like a, you know, like a little outbuilding, then it's not something you should be worried about.
No, that's right.
Well, this is as much to control use of that equipment on the highways, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. So, I mean, you know, there are cases where people are running a gravel business out of a residential zone.
No. Really?
We don't restrict RVs and boats. Is that on purpose? We don't currently.
I looked at this because I was thinking of the other
Both
issue.
sizes, that's right.
The boats only mentioned once in size. The RV's not in here at all.
So it should be.
That's by choice? Well, do we want to?
No, I didn't go there. It's not there now, so
Some communities do, and then you have to store your stuff off-site.
it's a matter of community preference. I
Yeah.
guess.
Do we have a problem with that? That's my point.
No, I don't think so. I haven't heard anybody complain about RVs or boats for that matter. Yeah, this is not.
So let's not build it into a bylaw if we don't need to.
Yeah, it's not
Oh,
Stamford,
so,
Connecticut. It's
Well, if we're doing the boat, if we're not doing an RV, where are we doing a boat?
where's the boat one?
The 7 meters?
No, what's clause?
Let me find it here.
Yeah, I know it's in
It's in
somewhere.
here, I saw, oh, there it is, yes, page 15, 4.3.2.
Or
7 meters, that's 21 feet.
No, more than 21.
24-ish.
25, yeah.
7.5 is 25.
Yeah, it's a pretty good sized boat.
It's a pretty good sized boat, on a trailer, always.
Well, actually, there's the mobile home, it's in number 1 above, sorry, I missed that. And the double
Residential.
They're just residential use, yeah.
I see a lot of that in my neighborhood these days. People living in the RVs.
Yeah.
So those are the two
The
then.
rental units now.
So some cargo.
But this is, yeah,
So you can still just park it. You just can't live in it.
Live in it, right?
What about temporary residential use in the summer when you have the kids come to stay? Can they not stay in a tent in your front yard?
yeah, we're not gonna get down to that level of detail.
Because that's not a residential use, that's just visiting.
Yeah,
Well, this is uses prohibited in all zones.
yeah.
Residential use of a mobile home, tent, trailer, or recreational vehicle. Residential use, not
Yes.
residential
Li-
parking.
Yeah, that's
Living in it.
No, no,
Somebody
use, yeah,
That's
living in
a
it.
different-
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's
People
a
live in
whole
old
different.
converted
Yeah.
school buses and things like that.
Well, I have a neighbor that used to have a mobile home in his driveway with his mother-in-law living in it, 50 feet long.
And we don't really want that.
No, we don't really want that, that's right.
We are really trying to
I don't have to tell you
define
who that
community
is, so
standards
it's
here.
okay.
And I think, you know, if anybody
have
knows
to
the
tell you
community
who it
standards,
is.
it's in theory us.
Yeah.
I think this probably encapsulates that quite well. In terms of some of the new
I
things
think,
that we
yeah.
found that we needed to control.
Is there something here we need to worry about? I don't think so.
I haven't heard
Well,
anybody.
I think it's well.
Okay, so Fred,
So-
what do you say? This is not the only and final kick at the can, of course. But I would say that your thing about small, what could be classified as industrial equipment is addressed. You're allowed that.
I think we need to go back and
Tighten up
See if
on
we
it.
can refine it.
yeah, see if we can refine it a bit, because I think it's, you know, we talk about commercial and industrial, and then we give an exception for commercial, but not industrial. Is a Bobcat a commercial or an industrial piece of equipment?
I like the license distinction.
The license versus
I think the
unlicensed.
license takes care of the stuff that we don't want licensed industrial equipment stored on residential property.
That makes sense.
Well, on this one, I mean, I'm thinking using snowblower is very topical right now. So if I want to use my neighbor's unlicensed snow blower, trots it down and he does my 225-foot driveway, if I can somehow talk Fred into loading his Bobcat onto his truck, he drives it over and he pushes it all in.
It would be draped in tarp, some of it if you didn't recognize it.
Oh, yeah, okay, that way. I don't-
Doesn't have a license plate, unidentified.
Yeah, so I
Yeah.
mean, I'm thinking here, okay, to me, it's personal use.
Absolutely.
And doing the same function.
Well, yeah, I think the tonnage is one of the keys here, but just the wording of it it looked to me like it was opening a crack of questions, and I think it would simplify life if it was clearly stated.
Yeah, good catch. It needs to be tightened up a bit. You got it, Peter?
And what is 4,600 kgs? Give me an eyeball.
10,000 pounds.
Like, what does that look
It's just
like in
like a-
truck world?
It's just like
Oh.
a pretty big,
My truck,
like a 5-ton van.
Your truck?
my
Yeah,
truck.
yours, yeah.
Your truck, so it's
Yeah.
basically nothing more than your truck,
Yeah.
which would be
That's
a
right.
truck and
Yeah,
trailer,
that's right,
46.
yeah.
But you're not commercial licensed.
No.
So using, and I don't know what the alleged commercial vehicle on Eileen Street is, but it's bigger than a cargo van, but it's obviously bigger than your truck. So if it was loaded full of crap, it's probably more than 4,600.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, so.
My truckload
It's gonna
is-
go
is-
up the
is a
street
lot.
that way too.
Do you actually want gross vehicle weight or do you want unloaded weight? Because what if the guy's got a load of platinum in there? How do we know? In other words, we can only go by the tare weight, not by the gross vehicle
Yeah,
weight.
my truck is actually, loaded, is actually allowed 5,200, I think, or something like that.
kgs.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there you go.
Well, the easiest thing is the GVW,
Yours would be
because
the
that's their
same.
license weight, and then you don't have to catch them in the act of kickable.
So that's as big as our biggest works vehicle, basically.
Well, you've got some.
Is gross vehicle weight unloaded?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, fine. That's okay. Shows what I know.
So I think we're on something.
Okay, good. Anything else? As I say, this is not our final kick at the can. I think this is. I was impressed, stunned, and gratified at how short it was. It's
I
very
like-
succinct.
I like the simple language.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you, because that's, I try to,
No, I'm with
you don't want, I
Carl on
want
the
people to
first-
know exactly what's happening.
It's very understandable.
Carl on the first point, and the simple language was a big one too.
I was turning pages. Is that it? That's fantastic. Well done, Steve.
I don't want to contradict what was just said, but 4.2, I'm a little unclear of what all this is. NA/W.
Oh, okay, and I think we've already done away with that, didn't we?
So where are we?
If we didn't,
Page 14 of 36, 4.2.
Principally.
It's a new. It's
oh,
a new
yeah,
zone.
yeah,
Yeah.
we changed the name of that. and
Oh,
this
thank
is-
goodness.
This is, yeah. This is where, this was the first go at compiling all the different.
Okay, well, if you're talking typos, you've got one extra clause under 4.18 as well. Just take it out.
And the extra number there, yeah.
Yeah.
So that,
I mean, these things will come out in the wash, so don't worry about it too much.
That'll get picked up, yeah.
Okay, so shall we move on? There's a seconded motion on the table. Would you like a reminder of what it is? All right, I will. That that the information report is received. So that's the report we've just had, and that a public meeting is held. So the public meeting we would just recommend to council tonight that it's just a thing for staff to set up, right? Is the 17th? That's 19th. That's pretty soon.
Thursday.
It's next Thursday.
Thursday.
Is that adequate notice for people? And enough time to set up the meeting and to do all the dog and pony show and the easels and the everything?
They were notified Friday.
it was in
Yeah, fair
last
enough.
week's
Yeah, okay.
as well.
So everybody's good with it?
The mayor didn't notice it.
No, I didn't notice it. And I typically read that thing.
And it's from
We'll
the
put
mayor's
it-
desk.
I think
The mayor's
it's
desk is
ample.
only the mayor's desk
It's
piece. The
legally,
rest
it's legally ample, and you don't want to provide too much notice and get too many people worked up about it. You want to have good input, but at the same time, you want to, you know,
That's true. We don't want egregious commentary. On the other hand, this encapsulates community standards. And so I want to be sure the community has...
Well,
But-
it's just first kick, really.
And it's also first kick, yeah.
yeah, we're trying to get as much done as we possibly can in a short period of time, and this is one hell of a lot, so.
Okay, so I think we're good to... No, we're not.
So I think you need to amend the motion so that it actually says that it be recommended to council, because you're not passing a
No,
motion
no
as a
resolutions here.
committee to, well, there is a resolution.
But do we need to recommend? We're just telling the staff to get ahead, go ahead
We
with
just
it.
move it on.
So
to
that'd be recommended to council, then, so then go to council tonight and you'll pass this.
To instruct staff to hold the meeting.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to receive the report now and recommend to council to instruct staff to blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Okay, so with that amended motion, I'll call the question. All in favour?
So just a sec, sorry, just if you could, sorry to be a pain, but just
Sorry to be the-
vote on the amendment, motion the amendment and vote on the amendment and then vote on
Fine, okay.
the motion as amended.
So the motion I need a motion. Can you say the motion in a CSC? You're not allowed to make a motion, are you?
I can't make a motion.
Okay, I'll make the motion that that this committee recommends to council to instruct staff to set up a public information meeting to discuss the draft zoning bylaw for 7 o'clock Thursday, January 19th at the Broughton Community Hall. So can I have a second for that motion, and any further discussion? All in favour on that motion, and opposed? That carries. And now back to the main motion, which is on the table. I'll call the question. All in favour? Opposed? That carries. Thank you, Mr. Corporate Officer, for doing things by the book. And we will now move on to staff reports, CFO, parcel tax verbal report.
So I have to go get Pam.
Just before I leave,
Who says you're leaving?
Get it straight.
I wanna.
Yeah, no, he's leaving.
Yeah. Well, actually, it's gonna be dark now anyway, but get the skating tires out and drive home. On the format for the meeting, because I heard you talk about the easels, and I don't have any capability, and Peter and I had a very brief discussion about what the format of this meeting might look like. But what I am going to do is have a PowerPoint presentation that will go through the key issues and the process to date, and probably do a, what would you say, a 15-20 minute presentation or something, and because I can work through it in more detail over the course of that meeting if need be. But on my end, I was looking at just essentially having some handouts of the PowerPoint that people can take away and can write questions on. As far as display material, I'm not sure what our capacities are here.
Not very much.
Yeah, not very much is the short answer. I think PowerPoint's fine. I would suggest, this is up to Peter, and maybe Peter and I will discuss this just before the time, but I don't think people need to know, nor do they care about how we came there. They want to know the result.
Yeah.
So we also don't want to say, here's the bylaw, and go and read it and let us know if you have questions. We do need to
We
do...
haven't had a lot of process behind this anyway.
Well, no, you went through a fairly formal process to amalgamate and think through, and
Yeah.
meetings,
Yeah,
meetings about meetings, and
Yeah, I think it's important to explain to people what the process has been in case they haven't been following it and they want to know, hey,
Yeah.
how did we get here?
I guarantee they haven't
So-
been following it, so
so-
that much is a given.
So
Yeah, it
people
hasn't.
usually want to know how did we get here and what does
And
it
why?
look like ahead. And,
So, but I think in terms of what the people want to take away from this meeting is the salient aspects of what's changed, and so you need to present that.
You've got it nailed, you've got a PowerPoint presentation, you're gonna provide handout material, that people have room to respond on.
So what is that process?
then that
Is
would
there an
be fine.
email address, or they can
well,
send
we'll
it in?
figure all that out.
You figure
Yeah,
it
yeah.
out. Okay, you.
Give people the opportunity to provide feedback, that's really what it's for.
And I think there needs to be an openness to, if there's very substantial discussion at the meeting. Typically, we don't want we want to put some boundaries on people's time for these sorts of
Yeah,
meetings.
yeah.
So, a couple of hours is enough to get
Yeah.
into it. And if it really needs more, and if there's several issues raised that we haven't really addressed or anticipated, then I would like you to at least think about being open to having another public meeting after that before we get into a formal
Yeah,
stage.
good. And Peter, you run the meeting. This is administrative.
Well, it'll be Steve and I.
Yeah, but I mean,
Yeah,
it's
you-
not
you-
council. It's not.
No,
yeah.
it's not council.
It's a staff presentation.
We'll be there, but
Oh yeah, we'll be there. But okay.
Peter will do the introductions.
we'll just say,
Yeah.
he did it.
Well, no, I want people to know that on their behalf, council's discussed this in some depth
Of
and at
course,
some length.
yeah.
This is ready for public discussion now. That's, I think,
That's right.
that's the
That's
main
exactly
point,
right.
yeah.
Yeah.
Decisions haven't been.
We've taken it as far as we can take it without public input.
So this will have top billing on the Friday e-post, or you're gonna do it beforehand?
Yeah, it'll be this week's.
Well, I'll mention it in the mayor's desk piece. That's
So
the
we're
only
doubling
piece
up.
people read.
You could light a fire in the fireplace and have a fireside chat with the people.
Thanks very much, Steve. Well done.
Thanks, Steve.
Yeah, I'll have to
very well
fight with
done.
Peter on what our overhead projector looks like. Not overhead projector.
Our screen?
Our screen.
Maybe take a 5-minute break here.
Yeah, let's take a break.
Sorry, Sam.
Oh, sorry.
So what's your next
Sorry.
gig, Steve?
Hold you in here too.
Oh, no, sorry, I think,
Okay, we've come back out of recess, and we're moving on to item 7A1, staff report on parcel tax. Pam.
Yes, it's not so much a staff report, as I just wanted the opportunity, thought it might be more efficient to just talk about Eileen's email, which was about the parcel tax, just making sure that everyone was okay, that they understood what I was trying to say. Essentially, when we got the debt in 2008, the $600,000 and the $800,000 loan for water, the choice was made at that time not to do it as a parcel tax. So there are debt costs of that, and I budget them every year just in the water budget, which you'll actually see on Thursday in the CSC. You can see the lines where I budget it, the interest payments, and so it actually isn't a parcel tax.
It's a fee.
It's was an expense. It just becomes
No, to the user, I mean.
what is billed as part of the user fees. Like
Yeah.
basically, I calculate my budget. These are the expenses I have to cover, and we cover them off with the user fees. So that's how. So it is essentially a flat rate because that's how we budget the.
Right,
The
but
water.
before this, it was not a flat rate, it came in with the mill rate.
No, it never has. This debt has always been just part of a water expense, and it's been billed through user fees. There was never a parcel tax done for it.
Or a mill rate tax is what Eileen is saying.
Yeah, which would be, meaning it would be either as a parcel, yeah, true.
Well, we did have parcel taxes.
You did.
Previously.
There was the water parcel
Yeah.
tax, which, like the sewer parcel tax, which
Yeah.
I'll talk about tonight, goes way back, and it was done before Brunswick Beach, before the community charter, and it was really just to cover essentially the same thing as water user fees. And because it didn't cover Brunswick Beach, which you had correctly pointed out when I remember seeing you when I first started working here, that's why we actually repealed it.
Well, no,
because,
that's what I
and that was the
remember,
whole
yeah,
purpose.
exactly, yeah,
But,
yeah.
but we'd never actually had a parcel tax for the debt.
But the reason around this
Repeal.
council being uncomfortable with parcel tax was the fact that we didn't know for sure what it was covering, what it wasn't, and who was getting it. Like, in my mind, I viewed it as, we don't know for sure what it was meant to cover, or where it's coming from, or what it's, we eventually found out, but the thing is, at the time, it seemed a little odd that we had parcel tax, that's all.
Right, I think
Yeah.
because it predated Brunswick Beach, that
That's
was
right.
the main reason for
That's right,
repealing it,
yeah.
is that we couldn't then go back and build Brunswick Beach, so
Yeah, we just
to make
wanted
it
to keep,
fair,
we just wanted to
repealed
keep
it.
everything up
Yeah.
in plain view, so people knew what they were paying
Yes,
for.
yes.
That was the whole point.
I mean, the whole logical policy reason behind the parcel tax is so that when lots are unoccupied, unbuilt, they too contribute to the cost of an amenity like water and sewer.
Right.
Before there's nobody there to charge a user fee to.
Yeah, exactly, which, again, I'm getting ahead of myself, but we'll talk about tonight, that's why they actually introduced the Kelvin Grove parcel tax. But on that point, parcel taxes are usually for debt or for some sort of capital, and the argument is if you have a parcel, even though you're not using the sewer or the water, you could still hook up to it, and it makes your property more valuable because you want to be able to hook up when you sell your parcel, unlike when we're just using it for the essential day-to-day maintenance of the water system, which is what those two parcel taxes were for, which wouldn't qualify as a parcel tax under the community charter now because you can't have a parcel tax just for your general maintenance costs.
Because that's what we were actually using
Yeah,
before.
it was.
But the debt hasn't been paid off yet.
Right, but the debt has nothing to do with that parcel tax. That we chose not to have a parcel tax for the debt. The old parcel tax.
Back in the day, should there have been a parcel tax instead until it was paid off?
It's there's an argument for both ways, which I will be bringing a report to council probably in the summer if we're successful with the grants we're going now to determine the best way.
Because it
to
means the
recover that.
unoccupied parcels also pay their share
Yes,
of their future use of the amenity,
yes.
which they will take benefit of.
Yes, as opposing doing it just by the user fees.
Yeah.
Although there's a higher administrative cost for the parcel taxes too.
You were saying that PSAB was not allowing.
No,
should
what
I
I
put?
what I had
And I
said was,
was
sorry, that was
wondering where that
another,
was.
sorry, a misunderstanding was, what I said was, PSAB requires water fund to be accounted for separately. The water expenses and the revenue have to come in a separate fund. So that is another reason why I
Right.
can't include the water debt expenses in the general fund and bill it as part of the property tax. It has to be a separate fund. But PSAB allows you to have parcel taxes. But what they don't allow you to do is include water expenses outside of the water fund.
So if we know that we're going to be opening up a parcel of land to lots and there's gonna be a transition period there where whether the house is on there or not, it might be wise to have a parcel tax in that particular case. That makes,
Yeah.
I can see that. And we may well end up doing that in the
Maybe
future.
coming up soon.
Maybe
Yeah.
coming up pretty soon, so that's
what you
good.
look at is a differential
Yeah.
between how many parcels you have versus.
I like that, the thought behind it is good.
Yeah, versus how many occupied land. And the other thing I'll add, the attraction, again, this will all come, I'll have to do more research on it, but parcel taxes don't have to be a flat fee, they can also be calculated on frontage.
Size, yes.
So if.
Frontage, not area,
frontage,
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that
Oh, I thought it
kind
was
of
area.
helps a bit in terms of the philosophy that a larger piece of land would use.
That works in
more
places
water,
where you're
sewer.
trying to charge for roads or for sewer pipe or water pipe.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is a problem, for example, Anmore and Vaquera, you know, they've got 5-acre lots. They've got people with quarter mile frontage. That costs a lot of money to put that sewer pipe in from this property to the next one, and they need them to pay for it. And so they use frontage-based.
Yeah. But it's something we
parcel
can
tax.
look at. The data's available quite easily from BC Assessment, so before council makes a decision on, hopefully, the debt.
I like the
we're going to
frontage
get.
one because I've got a triangular lot. So my frontage is about 2
Perfect.
inches.
That'd be good,
Then we
yeah.
do it by square footage.
So that's where you recuse yourself when we do the
I guess so.
vote.
I guess I'd have to, yeah. Okay,
So-
I will point out, and I said this on my email to you, is that Lions Bay has by far the highest utility fees in the province, by far. I mean, we're 30% higher than the next highest, which I think is Westbound. Is that something, is that just because our utilities are very expensive? Yeah,
It's the cost of the utility.
yeah.
But that's
Well,
including
it's
the
also
cost
what
of
the
the
cost
loan.
is, it's also,
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
it's also the fewer number of homes that the
Yes.
cost is spread over.
Yes.
It's not just,
Yeah.
yeah.
there's nobody to share it
Because we
with.
got such a small community,
Yeah.
that's why.
But yes, Eileen, the cost of servicing that debt, which is interest,
It's in the water fund.
is part of running water. We wouldn't
And
need the
that-
loan if it wasn't for
That's
that.
what the PSAB requirement is. I think that's where the misunderstanding came. The PSAB requirement isn't that you can't have parcel taxes. The PSAB requirement is that water debt cost has to be charged to water. It can't be charged to the general fund.
But could you have a mill rate tax for water? A separate mill rate tax
Still having a fund, though.
within the fund?
So-
Still having fund accounting, because that's, I think, what we used to have.
That would go against any kind of public policy, charging people more for their use of the water than,
Without
No,
meters.
for the loan.
without what?
Without meters. I mean, that's really the only thing that usually allows you to
Well,
charge.
yeah,
is
but
based on
that's
usage.
then not a
Yeah.
tax thing.
It's not the cost of the water, it's the cost of the loan.
But the loan is only to supply water. And the cost of the loan is a water cost. We wouldn't have the loan if it wasn't for water.
Like when we get a loan to do roads, it'll be charged to the general fund because
Okay.
it's a road loan.
Except I remember hearing a few years ago, 2011 or 2012, the auditor said that all the money had not been used for that, and some had gone into the roads. So it wasn't strictly for water.
Yeah, the two
There's
loans that
three
I'm
loans,
speaking
yeah.
about, the 600,000
Yeah,
and
but-
800,000
yes.
were for water.
There was
But
also a
they
road
weren't all
loan.
spent on water.
Yep, it was. It was on the
Yeah.
plants and on,
Apparently there was some that was not spent, the full amount.
You're thinking Lions Bay Avenue project?
Yes,
but that's
yes.
water.
And, no, but, no,
Or is
it
it
wasn't.
road?
I think what you
It
might be
was the
talking
road.
about is the loans that we got and then they chose to use them for another project.
But that
It
was the third
still-
loan.
But it was still a water project. that
Yeah, it was water
used
pipes.
for.
You've got to fix the road after
Yeah.
that, obviously, but
No, it wasn't. It was for putting the underground wiring and
Right.
things. It was used for, I
A
remember
variety of
Bill
things,
Cox
yeah.
was saying it
What
wasn't
underground
all
wiring?
spent on water. He drew it to our attention.
we don't have underground wiring.
No, they
No,
were trying awful
they
hard
were
to get it,
trying.
but they didn't get it.
Well, I mean, that's the discussion's moot. It wasn't used for that because it wasn't done.
Wasn't used
Well, it
all for
was,
water.
it was used for that, but it wasn't shown as being used for that when they were doing the research.
And the auditor picked it up and said.
They
that
used
it
water
was
funds
not.
for
Yes.
They
general
used the
fund
fund that
purposes.
was
Loan.
used to do the work on Lions Bay Avenue to research in the middle of the project. They actually stopped the project and incurred costs because they were looking for ways to see if they could get underground wiring.
Oh, I see.
That's what happened, and it just pissed everybody off.
Well, that's a one-off and it won't happen
That
again.
was
So,
a 10 grand
Yeah.
pole kind of thing that everyone,
That's right, yeah.
no,
Yeah.
okay, done.
Yeah, that was before my time, but I do know that, I'll have to double check this, but BDO did pick up the fact that one year the water debt costs were actually put into the general fund.
Yeah.
So it was actually the opposite of what you're saying, and then they had to be pulled out and put into the water fund. But there was
Yes.
a year where, and that was actually something that I corrected when I started. Some of the debt costs were actually going to the general fund, and they weren't supposed to be, so they got pulled back into the water fund.
Yes, okay.
And yeah, right now, everything, all the debt that was incurred for water is in the water fund. And council at that time chose not to do a parcel tax for it. And that will be a decision that this council faces if hopefully we're successful with our grant
And why would they have
application.
done that, do you think? Because that does mean that some people are getting a free ride. Some future developer. Not that there's that many parcels left in Lions Bay
Yeah.
that...
I think it's, you look at the differential between how many parcels that you don't tax through that method, but you also have to offset against the administrative cost, because there is a large administrative cost, much larger to
Than sending
administer
out
a
a
parcel
utility
tax.
bill, yeah.
Because every time the parcels change, like for example, the 2 Kelvin Grove lots that were sold, if they're developed, and then there's additional lots, you have to redo your parcel roll. You have to go out to the public again, and so there is much more administration involved in a parcel tax.
TikTok.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, got it. Okay, does
But I
that,
really just wanted
does
to make
that
sure that, and if you have
address...
any other questions, please feel free to email me, but I just
Okay.
thought if we addressed it this way, it might be,
Okay.
might be more efficient.
All good? Okay, so finding that topic, thank you. So a motion to receive that report, and a second, all in favour, opposed, that carries. And Fred, I believe you have a motion under 7C.
Yeah, how about we move that, I move that we move that till
Move
this
to move.
evening's meeting.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll table that one.
Sorry?
C1, 7C1.
Move it to when, sorry?
So-
Evening.
Tonight.
Evening.
So I think the proper thing would be a motion to refer it to the evening meeting of council.
Yes.
I second it.
That sounds good.
Okay, what he said.
Yeah, right.
Okay, all in favour? Opposed? Carried. New business, there being none, we'll move on to public questions and comments. There being none, we'll move to adjournment. Motion to adjourn, and a second, all in favour, opposed, carried. Meeting adjourned.